Welcome back, everybody. Hope you're doing well. Today, I want to briefly talk about delivery. Two things that you should know about delivery. One, we're going to go through the basics right now. And two, the whole point of this is for me to work with you individually and give you individual feedback. So, just a baseline for now, let's get started. If delivery is something that you're really interested in exploring more, I do have two more in depth videos on the syllabus that you should take a look at. Okay, so first off, we're moving or gesturing with a purpose, right? So, first thing, I'm standing up, as you can see, and I did a little jump. The idea is when I jump, my legs are going to land about shoulder width apart, and that's where you want to keep your feet. Or you do a little jump, and then you move your legs in and you put your feet together. I know you can't see my feet right now, but that's okay. You get the idea. Feet are either shoulder width apart or they're together. If you can do that, it's going to minimize, for some of you, some of the shifting that you might do when you're actually in front of a room. We definitely want to work on it because it will happen when you're in front of a room as well. It doesn't even need to be in front of a room of like 50 people for that to be the case. Okay, so now we got our stance all taken care of. I do have in the other two videos that I've shared with you some thoughts around movement and where you might be in this, in front of the room. If you're presenting in front of a picture or something like that, you want to use it to your advantage. When we're online, that's obviously not quite as important or even appropriate. So we're not going to talk about that too much in this video. Take a look if you do want to see more on that for like in-person presentations as well. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about gestures. I know I like to gesture a lot, but some things to think about for you. There's a box right here. It goes from your shoulders, it goes to your waist, and it goes, shoulder width apart. So there's this big square here. You want your gestures to be in the space, which is why having the camera set up the way I do is really helpful because I can see some of the gestures and you can get some of that energy out. So we are keeping our gestures in the box as much as possible, thinking about enumeration. There are three things we're going to do today. One, two, three, something like that. If something is bigger or smaller, right, you can compare, right? So sometimes we don't know what's going on. So there's sort of like a wishy-washy kind of thing going on. Totally fine. If you're surprised about something, if something's like, if you're trying to get someone to ask a question, you can mirror what you want. Like, I'd like everyone to give me a thumbs up right now, or I'd like everyone to raise their hands, right? Okay, so when you're doing that, you want to stay in the box as much as possible. And every once in a while, if you want to get the point across in a little bit bigger of a way, then go out of that box. But the whole point is, if you're always operating up here, then now you're screaming at your audience with your hands. So we want to keep your gestures somewhere in here. And again, we'll work on this more on an individual basis. It really just depends on you. But some baselines to think about: where are your gestures? Are they in the box? So the second thing we talked about is looking at critical points in the room, right? So in this case, on the Zoom environment, we're going to look right into the camera. That is the best way for you to make eye contact with your audience. I get that sometimes you also want to see your audience specifically. I highly recommend that even in the virtual environment. Lots of different ways you can do that. If you have a phone or an iPad or some sort of other device besides your laptop, you can set that up. That can also be somebody who joins into the Zoom room, and you can have that on the gallery view while you're presenting, for example. So you can see more people and still see what you're talking about. And if you have a slide up, you can still see your slide. So things like that, like, the more you're actually looking and making connections with your audience, the better. If you are sharing and you don't have those devices, you can stop sharing for a moment and have a quick check-in with the room. You'll see me doing that in class regularly, right? That gives you another opportunity to sort of look around your space and understand who's actually listening to you. So another area to think about when I talk about looking at the camera or at critical points in the room, think about what your face is doing. It's not just your eyes, it's your entire face that the audience is really focusing on. So I'm not going to tell you all to smile. That may not be appropriate, but it's all about certain facial expressions. You can raise your eyebrows. You can be surprised at some of the information that you're talking about. You can like hone in on something that's very, very specific or serious or detailed. And you can do different things with your face to change up the way that the audience is engaging with you. And lastly, we talked about variation in your voice, your tone, and structure. So making sure that you have good structure. Do you go up and down? One way to do that, ask a question and answer it. So how many things are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about 3 things today. So I've just forced the up and down. You can only do that so many times, but at least it gives you an idea of how to think about that. Pausing is another really good way. I talk very fast. I tend to pause in between my points. At least there, I can give the audience a chance to absorb what it is that I'm saying. You can also try to inflect your tone as much as possible. For some of you, that's a little harder than others, especially if you suddenly start to sound rehearsed when you're doing it. So again, we'll talk about that more individually. And again, structure is super important here. You got your main point, you've got 2 or 3 supporting points, and then you close back out with your main point. All right, so there you have it. It's 3 main principles that you're focusing on here. You're going to move and gesture with a purpose. I'm going to gesture mostly within the box, trying to enumerate, trying to have like big and small kind of connections, and just generally try to get something out as I'm talking. I'm also going to look right into my camera, and I'm going to remember that my face and my facial expressions are all part of that eye contact so that I have positive facial expressions throughout that process. And then finally, I'm going to structure as much as possible. I have a main point, I've got a few supporting points, and then I'm going to close back out with that main point. And I'm going to try to do that with a varied tone and inflection. Lots to think about, and obviously, you're not supposed to be an expert in any of those things. I don't think that I am. The point of this is to get you at a baseline, and then we're going to talk individually about where you go from here. Lots of feedback in this class, both from your peers and from me and from the teaching fellow. All of us going to give you things to think about for your personal delivery style. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.